All right, you ready to go?
Yeah,
You ready to do this?
I think so.
All right, welcome to the Film Guild, where we take a genre film each week, break it down to its cheesy core, and try to figure out what it all means. I am your co-host, Jason. I'm sitting here with Fred.
What's going on?
How you doing, buddy?
Not too bad. How about you?
Not bad at all. Saw Deadpool yesterday.
Really, I'm gonna see that tomorrow. I am super excited for it.
I give it a solid 9.5 out of 10. I loved every single minute of it.
That's the things I have yet to see a bad review for it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It actually broke the record for the highest grossing opening day for any rated R film. So,
Which is a huge surprise, honestly.
really?
Kind of. It's just like, I don't know. I guess they did enough marketing for it, and it's. I think that's probably what makes most of it, because I don't think a lot of people cared about Deadpool until they saw the trailers.
Yeah, the marketing, like anybody who studies marketing in Hollywood needs to take a lesson from that marketing company, because that was the most perfect marketing campaign I've ever seen for any movie.
And personally, like, they executed the social media form of marketing so well.
Oh yeah, they did everything perfect. It was amazing. It was amazing. So yeah, check that out. Just want to give a quick shout out at the very beginning to Small City Blues, who does our intro music. Check out, go search on iTunes for "Gimme Something" by Small City Blues and buy the track. It's like it's either 99 cents or $1.99. It's worth every penny of it. Support independent music and help those guys out. Also, really quick shout out. Last week, Fred mentioned the Horrified podcast. I had never listened to him before. I got all caught up this week. Fantastic group of guys. They mentioned us in their last podcast, so if we've got any listeners coming over from them, welcome. I hope you enjoy yourself as much as you do with them. It's a fantastic group of guys. We DM back and forth with them a couple of times this last week, and they're super great, super nice guys, and hopefully in the future soon we'll be maybe visiting each other's podcasts, so that would be fantastic.
And I mean, I think it goes without saying, though, that if you didn't come from them and you haven't heard of them, seriously, go check them out. Not right now. Listen to us first.
Yeah.
Let this run its course. Get all cut up on this. Give us all your place, and then go give them all your place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you are coming over for them, or if you're just coming and visiting us for the first time, definitely give us a follow on SoundCloud. Give us a subscribe to us on iTunes, and leave us a fantastic review. That helps us out a lot. Join our Twitter and Facebook. I do want to say from the very beginning, though, that this is an extremely spoiler-heavy podcast. In fact, we give away the entire film. Like, we'll go through this whole film. If you haven't seen Phantasm yet, which is the film we're covering this week, I question your lifestyle choices. But yeah, definitely give it a check out before you listen to this. And then go check us out on our Facebook page at facebook.com/FilmGuildCast, and on Twitter at FilmGuildCast, and join the conversation and let us know what you think of it. I am super fucking excited, actually, to be doing this film this week. Phantasm, which came out in 1979. I was 5 years old. This is the very first movie that scared me.
Really?
Absolutely, it is. And it was the TV spots, like 30-second TV spots.
Yeah.
That popped up. It showed like a little bit of the main character Michael when he's falling, when he goes through the dimensional barrier and he's kind of falling.
Yeah.
It shows that, and it also, at the end of each one of those trailers, shows what is it AFI or biography? Somebody, I'll have to look it up. They put it in the top 25 scariest moments in cinema, where he's laying in the bed and the tall man, played by Angus Scrimm, is hovering over him. Right. And then the ghouls come up and grab him, like, from both sides of the bed, because the bed actually is like in the graveyard. It's like a dream sequence.
Yeah.
I saw that. I was 5 years old. And it scared me so incredibly bad for years. So this was actually, before Friday the 13th came out on HBO and scared me and everything else, like, this movie terrified me. It's the first official horror film that scared me in my childhood.
That's interesting. I'm trying to think of what my first was, and I'm not sure, honestly.
Do you get scared from horror movies?
Not anymore. The thing is, I used to be, like, the worst. I was an absolute scaredy cat. Like, I couldn't watch, like, Eight-Legged Freaks without being scared.
Really? I did not know this.
This is an embarrassing one. I could not watch Snow White because the witch scared me as a kid.
Seriously?
Yeah, and then,
did
like,
not know that.
When I was, I think, like, 11 or 12, I finally watched Aliens.
Yeah.
And from there, I guess I went through and watched the whole quadrilogy after that, and I don't know, just haven't really been scared by movies since then.
The first Alien came out again about the same time. I was like, what, 5 or 6 years old, maybe, or 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And that trailer and the posters and stuff really that scared the crap out of me too.
Yeah.
When Aliens came out, Aliens the second is it's a James Cameron movie. It's really more of an action adventure
Yeah.
than really a horror movie, I guess. It's a science fiction, more of a science fiction stuff than it really is a horror like the first one is. But the first one really scared the crap out of me. I used to catch a lot of crap when you were a baby because your bedroom was my writing room.
Yeah.
And I used to have pictures of Freddy Krueger and all this stuff from all the horror magazines and horror posters and props. Like I had I had a replica of the Hellraiser puzzle box and a bunch of stuff that I collected when I was younger all around the room. And people used to really get irate when they'd walk in. They're like, how can you put this up? And I'm like, well, he's a baby. Like I probably look like Freddy Krueger to the kid,
It's like, I literally will not remember this
Right,
thing.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, and my other thing is I always wanted you to kind of grow up knowing that it was makeup.
Yeah.
That it was all that. And for the most part, when you're a little kid, you used to always say, like, it's just makeup.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a real monster, somebody behind the makeup. So, yeah, so that's a little aside, a little bit. Yeah, so Phantasm, the reason that this is almost like a little bit of a cheat because this very well could go under a favorites category, because it is one of the most well-known horror movies of all time, and it's certainly one that shaped horror cinema afterwards.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, one of the most iconic figures in, well, it's not unfortunate that he's an iconic horror figure, but Angus Scrimm, who played the tall man, passed away last month at age 89, which is unfortunate because he's amazing. He's like one of those guys that like embraced his character and embraced the horror fans.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of stories about he was just very gracious to the fans and used to have a lot of small talk with them and was very, very friendly. Some of them get caught up in it and they're not quite so friendly to fans, and some of them don't know what they're getting into and they get into the horror genre and the fans either scare them or annoy them and, they want to forget that they were, say, in a, Friday the 13th or something. And,
Actually, to be fair, though, now that I think about it, yeah, I think a lot of the really diehard horror fans are kind of like a little bit of some scary people because, I mean, they are the type that are like, oh, yeah, I totally am all for watching a movie where somebody just gets absolutely eviscerated. And let me show you my collection of intestine pictures.
Yeah, but, there's kind of two sets of those, diehard ones. The diehard ones who respect the people who make the films and star in the films and, are very respectful. And the ones that aren't so, that are kind of scary and sometimes maybe even might think that those are those. I remember seeing an interview with, John Carpenter.
Right.
Where, he would say, like, his office would get calls and there would people be saying, I want to talk to the Shape. And his secretary would be like, the Shape's not a real person, it's an actor. No, I want to speak to the real Shape. And it's like, there's not really, that thin line between reality and fantasy is maybe a little bit more blurred for them than other people. But from what I understand, he was absolutely fantastic and very, very gracious. So I decided to do Phantasm before it got any later, so it was still kind of relevant to the events at hand.
Yeah.
So get the technicals out of the way real quick. It was released in 1979 at what I call kind of the heyday of independent horror cinema. It had a budget of $300,000, which this story reminds me a lot of the story of the Evil Dead, which was kind of going on around the same time as this. Roughly, I think this happened a little bit beforehand, but Don Coscarelli wrote, directed, shot, and edited this film himself. The money was raised mostly by his father, who's listed as the main producer, and some doctors and lawyers that apparently he knew that he gathered the financing for. His mom was like the makeup artist and like production designer and, all this kind of stuff. And mainly it was friends and family and people that Don Coscarelli had worked with before that was in this. So it was a very true independent film,
Yeah.
And not Cabin in the Woods, Evil Dead was kind of the same way. They wouldn't raise their own money. And while, they had friends kind of work on it. They cast their own actors or whatever. But it's what I kind of call the heyday of that time period. After that, it kind of seemed like a lot of the independent type stuff got swallowed up into quote unquote independent studios, which were actually owned by real studios, and kind of hidden behind those corporate walls. So it runs at 88 minutes. It originally had a cut of 3 hours, and he screened the film and it was a disaster, so he cut it back. So I know we talked very briefly about the pacing of the film, and we'll talk about how some stuff that is in the version or maybe not in the same version that we watched, where things have been cut out on accident or things were cut out for time that now they don't make sense. Right. It went on to gross $12 million in the box office, though, so a gigantic commercial hit when you take that much money. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 64% and an audience rating of 67%. It had the tagline, which I actually have a signed poster from Coscarelli that has this tagline. It says, "If this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead."
Right, I've seen that hanging up there, and it's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's kind of got everything. So this film for me has like kind of the trifecta of some of the most important images in cinema, and one is the tall man, played by Angus Scrimm. And I just want to play real quick a little bit. It's actually at the beginning of the DVD, where he speaks about when he was offered the role of the tall man. If you're okay with that.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Hello. I'm Angus Scrimm. Some time ago, word reached me that a gifted young filmmaker with whom I'd worked previously had a role for me in a new film. I would play an alien, he said, and that was all he was going to tell me about it for the moment. My mind raced with the dramatic possibilities. An eager immigrant from the old country, meeting the struggles, the heartbreaks, but the eventual triumphs in the land of opportunity, America. Would I play an Irishman, a Russian, a Chinese? I'd have to master the appropriate accent. Maybe I'd speak initially in another language. Yo hablo un poquito español. Je parle français un peu. Bon peu passata, net noi crop. The young filmmaker was Don Coscarelli. The role he offered me was an alien indeed. A sinister, tall man from another dimension who plundered small-town America's graveyards for dead bodies to be shipped back to his world as slaves. He didn't speak with an accent. About all he ever said was, "Boy."
So anyway, that was Angus Scrimm kind of talking about how he was offered it. It's kind of a funny story where he had worked on something previously with Coscarelli, and Coscarelli apparently was very intimidated by him. He was 6'4". He really has that kind of evil look about him. And so he really wanted to make him a villain. So one of the producers or somebody came up to Angus Scrimm and said, "Hey, he's got a part for you. He wants you to play an alien." And he thought he was talking about an alien coming from another country. And he's like, no, it's a space alien. So it's kind of a funny deal. So Angus Scrimm is kind of the top of that trifecta. The second part of that is the Silver Spheres. I think we'd be hard pressed to find somebody who didn't somehow, some way see one of those flying silver balls.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was ingrained in your memory at all, but it certainly was mine.
Right. I mean, the thing is, like, I'm sure I've had at least seen it maybe once or twice before, but I don't know.
It could be the generation gap.
It very well could
maybe.
Because it's just one of those things that, like, a lot of this stuff doesn't seem to come up as often. Like, most of my horror discussions tend to take place online, and as a result, they either move towards something really, like, not as well known, or the more kind of newer sort of mainstream work.
Right.
Where it's like this one had, honestly, very few, like, big, like, just kind of gore, gross out moments. I mean, it falls into that sort of older horror style where I know we talked before where it's more about building the atmosphere than, like, the in-your-face, oh, yeah, we're gonna like, chop off as many limbs as possible and, do this, that, and the other thing that kind of you see more today.
Well, absolutely, and we'll get into it at the time, but this film actually really kind of it's really kind of a soft R. It was rated X, and we'll talk about why it is.
I was actually just reading that. I was hoping that you'd bring it up, too.
Yeah, we'll talk about it at a time, because actually the scene I'm talking about, the reason it's marked that is actually the one reason that it kind of scares me. And I think our opinions of this film is one of these that I love, because this is the oldest film that we've done so far. Right. And it's definitely, our opinions of it are going to be different based on our generations, per se. The other part of that, of kind of that trifecta, is the music of the film. To me, this is one of the top, probably like 3 or 4 horror themes out there that just gives me a bit of a chill. And I'm going to play a few seconds of that, if you don't mind. So yeah, to me, this is like an iconic soundtrack. It goes up there with kind of the Friday the 13th theme, or the Psycho theme.
Or, what about the Halloween theme? Because personally, that one's like the first one I go to whenever I think of horror themes.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. That's, to me, is the number one to that. So that kind of, to me, you kind of came to me. What is your initial thought of the movie after you saw it?
I mean, I can see why it might have been a good film for the time, but personally, it just hasn't aged very well. Like,
sure.
I had a couple big issues that, we'll talk about as it goes on, but something about the pacing felt very weird to me, and the lighting and stuff felt very, knowing that now that it had as the budget that it did, right, I can see why maybe it wasn't like a very well lit movie.
Right.
But I feel like there maybe should have been somebody on set saying, "Hey, by the way, guys, we can't see anything that's happening on camera right now." Right. And I came away from it just like feeling really just, I don't know, off about it. There was something about the movie that just didn't quite sit right with me that I can't quite place.
I completely understand that. After watching this last night, I play it every once in a while, but it's one of those things that's kind of in the background. Yeah. Last night I sat down and watched it and did the breakdown as I was watching it, taking notes. And it was kind of the first time in a long time that I've like sat and watched the whole thing. And I kind of went, it's the nostalgia that makes me love this film. It's the tall man. It's the spheres. It's the, my number one fear in the entire universe is death. Like, right. It's one of those things that is like, it's definitely something I probably should see a therapist about, the amount that I focus and worry about death. So for me, this struck a chord because it plays on that. Most of the movie takes place in a cemetery and or inside a funeral home or a mausoleum. And those images, those type of images that, the kind of the behind the scenes of the death market per se, scares the shit out of me. And it always has since I was a kid. So, the tall man, the spheres, the kind of just the graveyard, that scares me. But when you break it down scene by scene, like we're going to actually, there's a lot of things that I kind of go, I actually, about halfway through it, I was kind of like, you know what? This is kind of going a little long for me, actually.
Yeah. That's what's been my issue, though, is I tend to wind up having to, like, pause it to double check, okay, so how far in am I? And it's like, oh, I'm only a half hour in.
I did actually catch myself doing that, and I thought, wow, this is kind of weird. And actually, to me, there's, like, 2 climaxes to the movie.
Right.
And I, in my notes, and we'll get to it when it gets there, I could have actually done with one of the climaxes and had that be the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And, and so I will actually recognize that I still feel like it's a great film, especially for what it is and what they did with it. And to me, I love it because of its place in cinema history, and I love it because of the nostalgia and the visuals. But it's one of those things where I definitely can break down and find faults.
Of course.
So,
real quick, because we almost forgot it, and I just happened to catch it. What you drinking this week?
This week, I am drinking Hoegaarden beer. It's a German beer that my brother found at Whole Foods like a while back, and we absolutely loved it. It's
Right.
for anybody who's into kind of crafty beer. It's kind of like a Blue Moon kind of wheat beer. It's fantastic, and I have coffee on the side too.
Nice.
It's actually really good. What about you, man?
I am drinking Bedford's ginger beer, non-alcoholic, of course.
Is it as fantastic as it sounds?
It's actually pretty good. I kind of prefer. There's this other brand, Cock and Bull, but I've had them like 4 times. I'm like, I will try something different, and it's kind of comparable. I feel like the other one's maybe a bit stronger on the ginger side, but that's not necessarily a point to detract from this. I think it's still pretty good.
I need to. One of the things, kind of just as a weird aside, is I'm trying to work ways into putting more ginger in my life, because apparently ginger is very good for people with high blood pressure and the diabetes.
Yeah.
So I don't know, ginger. I need more of it.
I would also highly recommend just like little bits of like candied ginger. I know I used to have like a box of it that I would grab stuff from like every once in a while. I mean, you don't want to eat too much of it because it tends to be super overpowering. But, just a little nibble every once in a while is pretty good.
I have a jar of that, like, of the ginger shavings. I don't know if it's, like, pickled ginger, the stuff they put in Chinese food.
Yeah.
I have, like, a jar of that. Every once in a while I grab some of it and eat it. I don't know. It's, like, the same kind of way where sometimes at night I get up and I reach in and grab, like, a jar of, like, jalapeno chunks or whatever and eat some of those. It's a weird thing. I don't know.
I can't blame you, though, because, like, jalapenos are fucking great.
I know. It's weird. It's bizarre, isn't it? So do we want to get into the guts of the movie now? I watched this movie all the way through, and then I watched it again, kind of half watched it with the commentary running afterwards.
Yeah.
And I actually, my first time viewing, I missed the opening of this. It starts out in the cemetery at night, and with a guy making out with a pretty hot chick. Very 70s dude. He's got those mutton chop things,
I'm about to say, like, he's got the fuzziest looking face.
Yeah, very, very, like, Sergeant Pepper looking.
Yeah.
And he's making out with this chick who, gets naked. The initial, she's called the Lady in Lavender.
Yeah, I had to go check to see that there was an actual character or something.
And she's played by Kathy Lester. Now, the points at which she gets naked is actually played by somebody else, and I believe her name is Laura Mann. I actually don't have it written down, but she's actually called like Double Lavender.
Okay.
In the credits, when it got down to it, I guess Kathy Lester really didn't want to do the nude scene, so they had this other girl come in and sit in for it.
My biggest thing is it's like she's not so big of a character that it's like you couldn't have swapped her out with somebody else, like with somebody who would have been willing to do the nude scenes.
I agree. I don't know if it's like I feel like Kathy Lester like knew them. Somehow, like she's worked with him before. She definitely knew the character who plays Jodie, I guess. So
right, maybe that was the thing though. It's like the only way to get Jodie was to have her in there.
I don't know. I don't know the story behind that. It doesn't really say. But anyway, in the middle of it, she pulls out a knife and stabs him. And I missed that entire first scene the first time I watched it. Yeah, where I picked up is the next scene where it's the funeral and they're outside of this giant mausoleum, or funeral home / mausoleum, which looks fantastic.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. With that first scene, though, is she stabs him and then kind of turns into Angus Scrimm.
Yes, exactly, right.
And it's just like, for some reason, I either got in my mind that he is casting some sort of illusion to kind of take on this woman person thing, or shapeshifts, or it's just like
he's like a polymorph,
a thing, because it's just like, if it is him, it's like that poor guy. The last thing that he did was made out with Angus Scrimm, and it's like, that's got to be really disconcerting.
Well, and here's the thing with that too is I kind of like the way I saw it the first time, because I didn't actually see the girl morph per se into Angus Scrimm till the end.
Because they do it later in the movie as well. But the thing is, like, they do it where it's like, cut to her, cut to reaction shot, cut to her, cut to reaction shot, cut to Angus Scrimm.
Right. Yeah, and actually there's a couple of bits where it cuts between her and Angus Scrimm, like, together.
Yeah.
Like, it's her, and then it's Scrimm, and then it's her. And
that's what I meant, yeah.
And there's
and it's just, like, it's very kind of weird. Like, this was, I think, my first time that I really remember watching, because I know I watched it before, but it's kind of all a blur. But, watching, I'm like, I don't actually know what's going on here, which is a good way to open a film, I guess, but it's just like, I still, like, I don't know. Even the second time that happened, and knowing that he's like this kind of otherworldly being, it still was a huge point of like, okay, well, but why?
Well, and I could have actually done without seeing that and having it be the reveal later on that it's him.
Yeah.
That would have just been a choice on my part. It would have been more of a surprise. It's like, oh man, because I know like there's probably a decent amount of people who are spaking it to that chick.
Oh, very likely.
And what better way to make people really feel confused inside than at the end? It's like this chick you've been fantasizing about with her gigantic bouncing boobs suddenly turns into Angus Scrimm, and it's like, I'm not sure how to feel about my life anymore.
Here's the thing, though, is those poor kids only had to wait another 6 years for Return of the Living Dead.
Right? Oh, Linnea Quigley. Anyway, so it goes to the daytime, very bright daytime, to juxtapose. Jesus.
Juxtapose?
Yes, the two. So it's Jody and Reggie.
Which I'm glad that you have their names, because I did not write a single character's name in
Reggie's
this.
one of my favorite characters. I don't know why. He's a bald man with a ponytail, which I just love. And
he's a bald ponytail ice cream jazz or blues man.
Yes, who was actually in all of the films.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah, he's in them all. And I guess spoiler alert, right? Because he's gonna.
He kind of disappears off and on in this movie, where it goes from like he's here and he's in the investigation, and then he's gone, and then he's back, and then he's gone, and it's like, oh, and he's in the house, and now he's disappeared, and now he's back, and then he's gone, and it's like he felt like a character who was written in honestly as a way to explain kind of just conveniences.
Well, it's somebody,
and it's a way to be like, oh, okay, well, we need a reason for them to be here. Let's throw him in here, and then we'll just remove him.
He's the guy that you put in, so he's us.
Yeah.
So there's a reason for the main characters to explain what's going on to somebody, because otherwise you got to break the fourth wall or something. So he's kind of that nice go-to guy that he's like, what the hell is going on? And then they explain what's going on.
I mean, he even has that line, but the thing is, he's like, what the hell's going on? And then it cuts.
Right.
And it's like, oh, but that would have been a good moment to be like, so we got a situation here.
So Tommy, who we find out Tommy's the guy that had just been killed, and they called it a suicide. Tommy, Reggie, and Jody. And by the way, kids, don't name your future kids your son's Jody. Just don't, please.
I really go to like Jodie Foster for some reason.
I do too, and it's like, just don't. I mean, in this day and age where it's you're getting bullied in a way, just don't do it. So they were part of a band who traveled around and played music and whatnot. And we find out that they ruled it a suicide, and they're all there for the funeral. And can I just say that I've already mentioned this once, but mausoleums are scary as shit.
Right.
I don't know why, but just those long marble hallways with like the nameplates of
I'll be honest,
people.
When they're clean and not like a big decrepit mess, they're not so scary for me.
Really?
It's like I'm more creeped out by the mausoleum that nobody's ever entered in 100 years, and it's like, here's a bunch of cobwebs and spiders and nastiness.
I feel they're more scary when they're clean like that, because it seems weird if they're like cobwebs and dirt, like that's what they're supposed to be. Like, I just feel like it's clean, but it's death. It makes me feel bad.
To be fair, I did feel like it was a very sort of just weird building. I mean, we just don't have those here, like, at all. Like, I don't think there's a single mausoleum within this area.
Yeah.
It's all just regular tombstones. So, like, looking, I'm like, I don't actually know what this is supposed to be. I didn't realize it was supposed to be a mausoleum, because, again, all I've ever seen them is as, like, here's this big, dirty, rundown mess.
Well, and this is supposed to take place I believe it's supposed to take place in California, which is where they filmed it. Up here in the Northwest, we don't have the population that I guess they do down there or something, because we still have, like, big open cemeteries.
Yeah, I've got, I think 4 nearby.
Yeah, exactly. So Jody takes a minute, goes into the mausoleum, and goes and looks at his father's, Jody Sr.'s. They're not tombstones. What do you call those?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Wherever his casket is inside.
Because, like, I feel like I should know this, but...
Well, I also didn't realize that that those type of things contain caskets. I always thought those inside things with the nameplates and stuff, the drawers or whatever, actually had, like, ashes in them.
Right.
I didn't realize...
Or something like that. I didn't, just because I think that... crap, I know that there was some movie... I want to say it was like an Indiana Jones type movie where they had to like break open one of those or something.
Right.
Actually, don't they go into kind of a mausoleum in The Last Crusade?
No, they go into a library.
Well, yeah, but underneath the library there was the crypt.
It was a crypt, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, if I'm right, they have a couple of those drawers or something, which is why I'd always figured that. Oh no, there's like a casket or something inside.
Right. So so for some reason, and this actually to me borderline's creepy, but his younger brother, his 13-year-old brother Michael, like follows him to the cemetery, like rides his dirt bike to the cemetery. And we'll find this thing like through the whole movie where and I guess maybe it's because his parents have died recently. Like I think they said 2 years ago.
Right.
At some point. But everywhere Jody goes, the kid follows him. It does not matter where he goes. He's like there stalking him from the bushes.
I mean, that's things I think I've got written that he's like the worst kind of voyeur.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everywhere. It's just, it's
weird.
bizarre.
It's kind of, I read it more as like a weird form of like hero worship, but you know.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a subplot we'll talk about in a minute about that. But we get our first look at Angus Scrimm as a tall man because Mike hears some weird noises, and he goes around a corner where there's a door, and he goes to try to like peek in, and this hand reaches to his shoulder and grabs him, and he whips around, and the tall man is there, who is actually standing on an apple box because even at 6'4", him and Jody are almost the same height.
Well, and the thing is, though, is it's just like that tall man is very light on his feet.
He's amazing,
I guess, in the mausoleum.
Yeah,
because later on, though, he's walking across the street, and you hear like super heavy footfalls.
Right, and he only has something like 4 lines in the whole film, and this is one of them where he says, "The funeral's about to begin, sir." And then he's like has this weird like eyebrow raise, like it's the creepy Spock look.
Yeah.
Which is super creepy, but it's like, and it's funny because Jody just kind of goes, he does a great job because he's kind of like, okay, thank you, sir.
As soon as I felt like they did moments like that where it's like, I mean, you've got a moment later on where the guy's like, oh shit, and it's just like I felt like they did those moments of genuine like, okay, I'm like scrambling to figure out a thing to say in this situation pretty well.
Right. So he goes to does the they go and show the funeral, and you get a look at Tommy in the casket, which is kind of odd. I feel like I've only been to a couple of funerals where I got up and looked in the body, and it feels like they don't look zombified like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they do the makeup and stuff, and they kind of just look more like a piece.
It's possible though that like, I mean, this looked like kind of a smaller town
or
something.
Yeah.
So it's possible they just have like the one funeral director who just doesn't do such a great job.
Who happens to be like a 7-foot tall alien.
Yeah. So, you just kind of accept it as is.
Right. So they go out and they do the burial, and they Michael spies on them through binoculars as they carry the casket. Now, mind you, it takes like 6 people to carry the casket to the burial site.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out too, because I kind of gave it away, but Reggie has that balding head with the ponytail through the entire like 4 or 5 films.
Oh, does he really?
Same look. The dude doesn't even look like he ages, to be honest with you. And there's actually, I forgot to mention at the top of the show, there's actually a new Phantasm coming out, which will be the last one that Angus Scrimm is in, called Phantasm Ravager. Which,
wow, I had no clue that they were still doing them.
It's been shot. It was supposed to come out last year, and then it came out that they needed more money for effects, and then it came out that they needed to reshoot something else. So there is a substantial part of the population that believes that it's all a sham and it's not really going to come out because there's been so many setbacks and kind of, backtracking and whatnot. But yeah.
Wow, I just saw the original poster to the film, and looking at that, it is very different from the actual movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and a couple of things while I'm at it too, before I forget. J.J. Abrams loves Phantasm. In fact, Captain Phasma in the new Star Wars film, Force Awakens, is named Phasma because she's dressed in a chrome suit. And he said it reminded him of the ball from Phantasm. And J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot production company is actually coming out with a 4K restoration of Phantasm, which is
I saw that as well.
Yeah, I believe it's due out this year. So
they take care of the funeral stuff,
sure.
right?
Yep.
And kind of the funeral procession starts clearing out, and the kid Michael is still camped up on his hill with his binoculars, and happens to spy the tall man single-handedly lifting one of these coffins and loading it into the back of the hearse.
Yeah, lifts it up by himself, basically.
Yeah, so I've got written down that tall man is strong man.
He picks the casket up and he puts it back into the hearse. And so it kind of freaks the kid out, and he like gets back on his bike and starts riding back through the cemetery, I guess, to leave. And the tall man like looks at him, and there's some weird like jump cut close up to him, like I guess he's using powers.
Yeah.
And basically it's like it's like he telekinetically tosses a stick into the spokes of this kid's bike, because he just like end over end like flies off of it.
Which honestly is always so much fun to me.
Yeah, I mean it looked great, but yeah, so he kind of he gets up and leaves very quickly. And then it cuts to, and to be honest with you, the cuts to different parts of the story, I think, is what bothers me the most. That makes it almost a little incohesive, because you go from that to him, if I have this down right, it goes from that to him walking down the street to the fortune teller's house.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a strange aside. He's met by a little blonde girl. He's obviously a frequent flyer to this place because she knows who he is.
Yeah.
And he sits down and she wheels...
Actually, I've got written, hey, cute blonde, let me see your grandma.
Right.
And it's just like, I don't know. It's very kind of just bizarre. Like, I feel like a kid his age should be interested in this girl, but I guess maybe since he's such a frequent person there, that it's just like, yeah, no, I'm only here to go see your weird, like, blind, mute or something,
right,
grandma lady.
Yeah, and, I guess it is kind of like seeing the blonde, right? Because she talks for the grandma. She wheels in the grandma. She's got these dark glasses on. I don't know if you noticed, but the grandma had a star tattoo on her forehead.
I actually didn't notice that.
She has a star tattoo on her forehead, and the granddaughter has the same star tattoo on her cheek.
Huh. And I did notice the cheek bit. I didn't notice the forehead, though.
Yeah, and somehow they must be linked mentally or something, because she says, Grandma wants to know why... what brings you back here? And he says, well, tell Grandma. And she goes, well, she can hear you. And it's like, okay, so I guess she just can't talk. He's like, oh yeah. And I'm kind of going, oh, it's such a kind of a weird deal. Kind of the subplot of this film, which is abandonment.
Right.
Basically the side plot of the film is now that he's, turning 13, his older brother, who hates the town and wants to tour and wants to do all this stuff, is basically getting to the point where he wants to send him off to live with his aunt so he can go out and do his thing. And so the whole subplot to the thing is this brother is basically on the verge of leaving. And so he goes and addresses the grandmother and says, I heard him talking to somebody about this. And this was kind of a weird thing, too, because it goes to this flashback where they pull up in the car and he gets out, lifts the hood.
Okay, I didn't know that was a flashback, honestly. I thought that was, like, later on, and I'm like, well, yeah. My biggest issue is the brother, like, is openly starting to talk with his friend about this.
Right.
And it's like, the kid's just underneath the car right now.
And it's this guy walks up, and apparently he's a friend of Tommy and Reggie and him, because he's back for the funeral. And the kid, like, just jump back to this. So they get out, the kid opens the hood and pulls a socket out of his pocket. And I kind of said, is this guy like Anakin Skywalker? Like,
I guess so.
Like he just sits around twirling a wrench and he's like, I wouldn't have gotten this far in life if I wasn't so good at fixing things.
Here's the thing, though, I've forgotten that, I mean, they've got a scene where the kid, I guess, is driving to the house, right?
Yeah.
That kid should not be driving because, I mean, he is incapable of driving in a straight line.
Yeah, to be fair, he's 13.
Well, but that's the thing, though, is he drifts, like, halfway into the oncoming lane,
right,
and then back over.
Right.
And she's like, you are so lucky that you're living in a small town where apparently nobody ever drives anywhere.
A small town in which, apparently, at some point at night, nobody goes out at all.
Yeah.
So he crawls underneath the car, and it's fixing something, and this guy walks up and says, what are you still doing in this town? He's like, I'm taking care of the kid, but he's 13 now, so it's kind of time for him to go to his aunt's, and it shows him like underneath, like fixing the car, and listening to him basically saying, I'm gonna take off. So he's speaking to the grandma about the fact that he's talking about taking off, and wants to know if, I guess it never really says if he's looking just for advice, or if he wants the fortune teller to tell him if he's really leaving or not.
Yeah, I kind of read it as definitely like looking for advice, or just trying to figure out what to do in this situation.
Right. I kind of got a little bit mixed up because there's actually two flashbacks, because she says, like, the granddaughter says, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. What's supposed to work out is going to work out, basically. And he says, well, there's something else, like something weird's going on at the cemetery. And that's when it goes to him watching the tall man put the casket back in, and then the thing with the bike. So that actually happened in the next scene. I kind of got that a little bit mixed up, which it doesn't bode well for how well my brain processed the plot of the film. So out of nowhere, this box just appears at the table, out of nowhere. And I remember thinking, because she's like, put your hand in it. And I have in the note, I said, is this the goddamn Gom Jabbar?
Right.
What the hell is going on here? And I didn't realize at the time it was kind of a conscious nod to Dune. But
this thing's actually, I had to double check, like, when did Dune come out? Because it's like, it is so very similar.
Well, the film came out later on, but the film's based on books that had come out before.
Yeah.
So
I just wasn't sure if it was in the books because I've never read them.
Yeah, the Gom Jabbar test, which for anybody that has never seen Dune or read Dune, in the Gom Jabbar test, the Gom Jabbar is actually like a needle that you can put on your thumb that you can stick up to somebody's neck with this poison that will kill you. And the way that they test your humanity is they have you put your hand into a box, and there's illusion that your hand is burning. And if you're a human who can beat your instincts, you can ignore your hand burning, because you know that if you pull your hand out, they're going to jab you with this needle and you're going to die.
Yeah.
And so if you can survive the test, it means that your humanity overrides the animal spirit. And something very similar happens here. He puts his hand in, and it latches onto his hand and acts like it's eating it.
Yeah.
And he starts obviously moving his hand around, and it looks like it's chomping on it. And he's like, hey, this really hurts. To which leads to one of the most wooden weird things. It almost reminds me of the scene in Star Wars during the trench run, where the pilot's like, stay on target. He's like, they're coming around. He's like, stay on target.
They're too close.
It's like the same thing. Where she says, don't fear, Michael. And he's like, hey, blah, blah, blah. Don't fear. And he's like, hey, this just, and she's like, don't fear. And she's like staring straight ahead. And I'm kind of going, that's when I looked up, and I'm like, was this chicken anything else? And it's like, nope, she was only in Phantasm, and that explains why. It was so wooden. I don't know if you got the same thing or not.
In the same note, though, of the kid dealing with this thing, and yes, I am totally gonna say this. I messaged you this last night as soon as I wrote it down, but man, I have seen my fair share of tiny hands in big boxes.
Oh my.
It was immediately what I thought of, and it's like, God damn it. But I mean, it really is too bad that Dune isn't out yet, because it's like, if it was, this kid would have just been able to watch it and just be like, oh yeah, nope, I got this thing.
Yeah.
Don't fear, no big deal. This is just like that test.
Right.
Big whoop.
And this is, this does play a bigger part towards the end, actually.
Yeah.
The theme of don't fear, it's actually the grandmother basically teaching him a lesson that
that's what I'd figured, was that it was very much like she knows that he's gonna have to deal with this at a later point, so she knows that she has to then use this as a lesson to him.
Right. So he kind of stands up. He's like, okay, and so he's like, oh hey, and here's a wad of cash, and then the cash in the box disappear, and he leaves, and the girls start laughing, and the grandma has this really creepy mouse laugh.
Here's the thing: is I didn't notice her actually laughing. I noticed her kind of lean back with a smirk, but I didn't notice an actual laugh.
If you listen to it, she has this little mouse laugh, and I can't even replicate it, and it really chilled me to the bone. It's like, so this is the scariest part of the movie, is the mouse laugh from the grandma, and so they laugh, and she sits back and goes straight face, and the granddaughter is like, huh, and puts her hand on her chin basically and just starts staring into space. And I'm like, so this is what they do all day? Like, they just stare into space,
like,
waiting for people to come by.
To stop by.
Right. It was so weird. So then we go to Reggie's ice cream truck. Fred already mentioned that Reggie owns an ice cream business, and actually he has an ice cream store. Okay. That is not shown in the theatrical version. There is a scene that's cut out of it, a deleted scene where Jody gets Michael drunk, and they go to Reggie's store and have ice cream and have a food fight. So Reggie actually has an ice cream store, but he spends the day driving around in his ice cream truck. And so Jody is sitting on the front porch with his guitar and amp in the most ridiculous 70s outfit I've ever seen, like some weird brimmed hat and a Rolling Stones shirt.
Yeah.
And Reggie jumps out and like bounds with, reckless abandon up to the porch, and he's like, "Hey, cool, it's jam time." And he like opens his guitar case and pulls out his thing, and they start singing a song, and he starts playing it, And that's my impression of the song.
I think it's pretty close.
And I just wrote down, oh God, the 70s.
Yeah.
Like, it's just such a 70s scene, really. It reminds me of almost like the old beach films that Mystery Science Theater would make fun of. Like Catalina Caper. If you guys haven't seen Catalina Caper episode of Mystery Science Theater, go out and watch it.
I honestly don't think I have, so I'll have to watch it next time I'm at your place.
But after they're done, we have what I call Chekhov's tuning fork.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is the worst part is like they focus in on it so much. I'm like, okay, well, this is clearly gonna have to become a thing later in the movie.
Right, and if you're not like familiar with Chekhov's gun or Chekhov's law, basically it's that if you show a gun in one scene, that gun has to show up in a later scene. For a purpose.
If a gun shows up in the first act, then it has to have been used by the third.
Right.
By the end of the second.
Right. So he goes and taps the tuning fork, and nowadays I just have like an app that I tune my guitar with.
Best thing is like that I use a similar app, and it is so useful.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a tuning fork since I was like a little kid.
I've literally never seen one like it. Anytime I've have an instrument tuned, there's a better electronic resource for it.
Right. But there is a great thing where you may not notice it the first time you're seeing it, but he hits the tuning fork and he puts it on the guitar to tune, and it cuts back to the mausoleum where you hear a hum, which is very similar to the hum of the tuning fork.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that, but that is an interesting transition.
And yeah, and the blonde granddaughter, which is odd, like, did she just walk there and for no reason, like she's gonna go check it out? It seemed very weird
I'd assumed that was the case.
She just showed up at the cemetery, and she goes down back to the point that Jody was at, where the door was, and there's a very like persistent hum behind it, and she opens it up, and all she sees is light pouring from the inside, and then it cuts to the mausoleum, and you hear her scream.
Here's the thing, I've got written, and behind that door, naked old men. Like, that's what she's really screaming about, that she having to walk in on the tall man changing, and she's like, oh, no.
Wouldn't it be weird, knowing that later on that that part of that is kind of a humming thing? Wouldn't it be weird if it was just one of those things where the tall man, like, just laid his sack over one of the tuning things and was like... it was like, it was the 70s, there wasn't fleshlights yet. So
so he's just like, I gotta use that.
He just lays his 7-foot tall cock right on the top of it and trying to just let
they didn't have the internet to provide all these different weird things where it's like microwave banana peel.
Oh,
use cornstarch and water.
Oh God. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, you have you not seen that one?
No.
I will link that to you later.
So I wrote down that was random. Just kind of seemed that, it just kind of was like a little like 2-minute scene that kind of came out of nowhere.
It really is a scene that's out of nowhere, and nothing ever comes out of it.
Right. And another scene that comes out of nowhere is Jody pulls up to, it's at nighttime, Jody pulls up to Dune's Cantina, which I don't know if the place was actually called Dune's Cantina. Somewhere I saw it written that it was another conscious nod to the book Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune.
Right.
And he walks in, and I wrote in, isn't disco dead yet? Because it seemed like it was a very 70s disco theme. Now, something that was mentioned in the, if you go back and watch the scene, was that they pretty much had free reign of this bar. It was an actual bar. And the owner of the bar can be seen sitting at the end of the bar, kind of in shadow, and he looks like the dude from Godfather's Pizza. The Godfather's Pizza commercials, like he's got that. It looks like he's out of the mafia. He's got a.
I have no goddamn clue what you're talking
about. He has like a pinstripe suit with a tie and like a hat, like a wide brim hat with a mustache. Mm-hmm. And he's just sitting in the corner, like in the shadows. And when Jody walks in, he kind of nods at him and he waves. So apparently, that was the thing is he had to put him in the film and he had to buy all the drinks for real.
Okay.
And apparently it led to another thing that they had to deal with Dos Equis.
That's the things I noticed that during one of the later scenes where Michael's like working on the car and there's like a Dos Equis thing there.
Yeah, and he's drinking one in the bar, and apparently like one of the producers had written to the brewing company and said, we're doing this film, we'd like to, feature it or whatever, and apparently they sent them something like 60 cases.
So can we do that? Can we just
I want to. If anybody wants,
we'll construct a movie about.
You know what? Here's the thing. If you want to sponsor this podcast, I will drink that beer during every single podcast and mention it every few minutes.
So if I brewed my own beer for you and it wound up like I intentionally made it the worst thing ever, you would still drink it then, right?
I would drink it at least once.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna like put together like raspberry and sewage flavored beer.
There you go,
and you are totally drinking it.
Will Wheaton, if you're listening to this, because I know you brew your own beer, if you want to send me one of your specialty beers, I'll shout it out too. Just bring me the beer.
I don't think Will Wheaton needs the additional publicity.
Bring me the beer. That's all I'm saying. Bring me the beer.
Now, like somebody like Blue Balls Boston Brewing Company, those guys need all the support that they can get. So if you guys would go support Blue Balls Boston Brewing Company, that would be great.
Oh my god. So in another real stalkerish move, like Michael follows him and like watches him through the window. Again,
right, that's actually where I have written down that he's just a fucking creepy voyeur.
Yeah, like he's just always there. Just a really it leaves me with a weird feeling. So there's a blonde sitting at the bar who we recognize as the is it the lady in lavender?
Well, if you aren't face blind like me.
Okay.
Because she was just a random woman for me.
Well, to me, she was a random woman because I missed that opening scene.
Oh, that makes sense.
So for me, when I watched this last night, it was the first time I'd seen her. Which actually then follows in with the fastest hookup in the history of all hookups.
Because that's the thing is he walks in, spends 2 seconds in the bar.
He drinks his beer once.
Says a word to the woman and then walks out. And I'm like, I want to learn your ways.
I want to know what he said to her.
I mean, it's probably just, hey, let's go bone in the cemetery, because that's right where they go.
You think he was just like...
Either that, or maybe she'd suggest it. Now, knowing now that she's, it's the same woman, it makes more sense, because originally I had written, like, what is up with all the women in this town in cemeteries? Like,
right.
What the fuck? But knowing that it's the same woman then, same Angus Scrimm woman, it suddenly makes a lot more sense.
A little bit. But, it was like, it's Dos Equis, so did he just go up and go... Stay thirsty, my friends. And she was like, so. Bone me now, please. For the love of God, put it in me.
Or, hey, so I'm related to the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah, she's like, haven't I seen you somewhere? And it's like, you maybe seen my commercials.
That's the thing I would love. Let's recast Jody with him.
With the...
That'd be great. Let's throw the Dos Equis guy in instead.
I don't know. It's like, I drink Dos Equis. I see you drink Dos Equis too, and she's just like, you know what? Fuck me.
Do you think that he's got enough lines that we could just like redub the whole movie in his voice?
Maybe, I don't know, but it is one of those weird things where it's just like he literally, and the thing is it really could be one of those things where film is the mastery of time and space. It could be one of those things where they sat down and talked for a while and they just cut it out.
Yeah, that's also very possible.
You don't want a minute and a half of him staring in the window and watching them talk. Maybe it was just one of those things where he just cut to it. It seems kind of odd because some things drag out a little too long, but this was just like one of those things where it's like literally he takes a sip of his beer.
Thing is, if we didn't see him walking out, I would have felt differently. Like if it was him, he was talking to her, then we cut to the cemetery. That would be something entirely different. But instead, he goes and talks to her and then walks out with her.
Right. Yeah.
All in the span of a minute tops of walking into the bar.
And whose idea was it to go to the cemetery? Because they walk out of the bar like arm in arm, and she's like giggling
because he's like, "Hey, it's just over this way."
Yeah, he's like, "It's just down the street." To which one of my, I don't know where the note is somewhere. I'm like, somewhere I wrote down. Actually, it's the next thing I wrote down is this entire fucking town built around the cemetery?
It's very
because
possible
it
that
seems
it might
like
be, though.
no matter where they are in the town, the cemetery is just. One of my major problems in this film is spatial relation.
Yeah,
I have written down
maybe
somewhere
that's
that
like an intentional trick in it, though.
Maybe.
It's like, we're gonna really try and drive home the just overall weirdness of this whole thing.
Yeah, it's like
with by messing with your sense of space. It's kind of like with The Shining, where it's like nothing in this hotel should make sense.
It could be, and it could be like this town is this town is like California's Twin Peaks. It's just not, because it is one of those things, and I realize they did it to budgetary reasons. But really, with the exception of a scene coming up pretty soon where Michael's walking downtown, you don't see anybody else. When they're running around at night and they're driving down the roads and stuff, there's nobody out. They don't run into another human being. And I know that it's because of the low budget, logistically, that's why. But it is very weird. It's weird, but it's also a little bit of the film's charm because it gives it an otherworldly feeling to it. Like, these people are the only ones that actually exist in this world. So I guess you could kind of take it either way, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So they go to it's just down the street. They go and find a like a flat grave basically and lay down and start making out. And the kid sneaks up behind a bush and starts watching him. And at this point I write down like seriously, the kid doesn't need to go to his aunt's. He needs to go to a hospital. He needs to be put in a home.
Although I wonder, like, maybe that was just a thing that people did back then. Like, nowadays, as soon as you're interested in women, it's like, you pull it up on Pornhub or
no. I was alive in 79 and people didn't act
and
like
back
that.
then they were just like, dude, I'm totally gonna watch my brother go to town.
Yeah,
this girl.
the thing. Yeah, here's the thing. I mean, what the Muppets are on tonight, or I can watch Captain Kangaroo
at this time.
No, you know what? I'm
gonna
go watch my
you
brother
were also
Bone.
the oldest.
That's true.
David, meanwhile, was like, yes.
Yeah, well, he was at this point. He wasn't even born yet. So,
well, and this is implying that at any point during high school you ever got with a woman.
It happened a lot.
/ drink.
Yeah, it happened a lot. I'm not gonna lie. And you know what? Actually, now that you mention it, I think he has like a lot of stories of like trying to walk in on us and stuff when I had girls over.
See what I'm saying?
So you
back
actually may be onto something.
You just did that.
I'm not gonna. You may have tacked into something. I don't know. To me though, it's creepy. The kid.
I mean, there's way too many stories on Reddit of kids hiding in their closet to watch their parents like go to Bone Zone.
Yeah, I don't know. It's creepy. So she's like, she's obviously not from around there because she says, what do people do around here for fun? And he's like, well, to which she eats his face.
Yeah, like immediately.
Like by eats his face, I mean.
I was about to say, because it would be great if it was a literal eating of the face.
Yeah, she doesn't eat his face, but she definitely like shoves her tongue down his throat, and it's like, whoa, holy crap. So they lay down on the tombstone, to which I think she does it. She like pulls her shirt down. She's not wearing a bra. She just pulls this halter top down.
Well, because it was the 70s,
yeah, she pulls her halter top down to where these boobies just go kaboing! Like, literally like spring-loaded fucking Winchester rounds. They're just like, I don't know. I mean, that's probably some of the best silicone. I don't know. It's like, and Jody looks down and actually says out loud, wow.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's pretty,
wow.
It's pretty fantastic.
That's what you say? To which then Michael, more understandingly, who's in the bushes, says, wow.
Yeah, because this thing is, I mean, it's probably Michael's first set of like actual tits.
Yeah, he's very happy that there's boobies going on, but
then of course we get he's sadly like is interrupted from his fucking creepy voyeuristic habits, which I'm not bashing anybody who is like one of those voyeurs out there, but when you're 13 and you're just like following your brother around and watching everything that he does, which maybe that's it, maybe that's why he's actually following him around all the time, is he's just like, I know at one point he's gonna have to meet a woman.
Here's the thing. There's a difference between like a couple like being bored and the wife says, you know what, hide in the closet when I'm done with my shower. I'm just gonna bust out my vibrator and you can watch. Right. There's like a difference between that and like people who like legit put cameras in like toilets and shit.
I never
That
got the
shit
toilet
will
camera
get you
personally.
fucking arrested, people. Don't do it. Stay out of people's
Oh
toilets,
man, I gotta
man.
send you a video afterwards of a guy who gets caught on security camera of trying to take upskirt photos. It is great.
Oh, that's awesome.
But anyways, poor Michael is interrupted by some noises in the woods behind him, and I guess something bursts out of there because he tears his ass out of the woods.
This is the part that I
running
started
past his
cracking
brother.
up. It's like, so here's the thing. I don't know if you actually, if he actually sees it. Oh, it is. This is the first shot of the Jawas.
Yeah.
And I say Jawas.
Houtini.
Yeah, Houtini. The thing is what's really funny is they call them dwarves in the movie, but they look like Jawas.
I mean, they're literally like, here's a brown hood with a completely blacked out face, and you're tiny.
And actually, this was filmed before Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
And
well,
I guess
was it filmed before then?
It was filmed
because I read that the script was finished before then.
The design and stuff. In fact, what I had heard during a commentary or something was that they were filming and somebody came up to him. I don't know if it was Angus Scrimm or somebody came up and said, "Have you seen this film Star Wars? Like, your dwarves are in it." And apparently they kind of went, "Oh my god, looks just like the dwarves."
How horrible must that feel to be like, I totally came up with something completely original and awesome.
Right. And
it's like, oh no, I did nothing apparently.
And then like to have Mel Brooks totally own both of you a decade later with the Dink Dinks.
Right. Those guys are the greatest thing ever.
So the dwarf starts chasing him, and literally they look like Jawas, so that's how you can picture him. And he screams the best scream in the world. I can't even do it. He's like, ah! And he screams past the two on the tombstone. And it sounds like this. Ah!
And that's an excellent fade on that.
Thank you. And I am cracking up because Jody like pops up with the chick's panties in his mouth. And I'm like, is this a real thing? Like, guys do this?
Apparently.
I don't know. And he like picks up and he looks around and he looks to where his brother disappears. He says, "What the heck?" Like just like that. And I don't know. It's so funny. So he says, "Hang on a second. I got to take care of this." And he runs down and catches his brother. And he runs
down with the underwear still in his mouth.
Yeah, and he like catches his brother like down the hill at the road.
Where suddenly the underwear is gone.
Yeah, and the underwear is gone. And but his brother, like his little brother, like takes on this really weird tone.
Yeah.
Where it's like very judgmental or something, because he's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I didn't mean any harm, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, they're chasing me. He's like, come on. And he's like, where's that girl anyway? And it's like, what the hell? Like, seriously?
Here's the thing, though. So I actually have a good, like, new subplot to this.
Yeah.
Where, actually that whole scene was actually the culmination of the Great Underwear Heist. Because, as you can see, he, Here's the plan, okay? So Jody picks up women from the cemetery,
sure,
okay?
Right.
Or from the bar.
Right.
Brings them to the cemetery. They start getting busy. He, like, gets the underwear off. That's when Michael has his cue to run off, right? Thus, Jody has to follow him, he keeps the underwear on him. They wait long enough for the woman to get pissed, and she leaves. Then they take the underwear, they sell it to Japan for a huge markup.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
How much time do you spend thinking about that?
I actually spent about 10 seconds thinking about it last night.
Wow, that's creative.
I mean, literally, as he's running with the underwear, I have written that it's the Great Underwear Heist.
I also have written down here, Holy Symbols Batman. The music is very overpowering sometimes, especially with the cymbals and the drums. And this
you
is
forgot
one of
the
those
best
points.
line, though.
What's that?
So during the scene, okay, where they're down at the bottom of the hill, and Jody's kind of getting on Michael's case.
Yeah.
And Michael's like, I heard something in the woods. And Jody's like, it was probably a gopher in heat.
Oh, right. That's right.
Like, yeah, because that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm like, how big are the gophers in this town? Because I've seen gophers, and they're not that big.
Apparently, they're giant.
And how horny are the gophers that they're chasing around little kids in cemeteries?
Extremely. Here's the thing is, they aren't actually gophers. They're tiny little snookies.
That makes more sense. I find that more believable.
Except Snooki's more orange than brown.
Right. Well,
I mean, orange, brown, in the dark, it all looks the same, right?
Right. So Jody tells him to get the hell home, and he goes up, and the girl's gone. Which, I mean, any girl would be. Suddenly, she's got no panties, no bra, and she's laying on a tombstone, and she's by herself. I mean, I would get up and leave too.
Which honestly just sounds like, an average Friday night to me, but,
well,
whatever.
Stay out of my diary. Stop reading it. Dear diary, got off on a tombstone again. I'm starting to wonder maybe I might have a problem. I hope my little brother wasn't watching me again. Actually...
Oh, man, I gotta see some Blogspot pages.
I find that kind of hot. I hope he was... Oh, God! I just did it again. Jesus Christ.
Here's the worst part is it's like... You gotta wonder whose grave that was. I mean... Like... That poor person. It could have been, like, the nicest old grandma.
Here's the thing. When I die and I'm buried and whatever, I don't even want to think about it. It makes me have panic attacks. But if I'm died and buried and something like that, every person listening to this podcast has permission to come fuck on my grave. Just do it, please.
I'm going to actually be cremated and my ashes spread because then I have a higher chance of the ground that I currently reside within becoming Bone Town.
Okay. I'm game for that too. I probably will too. Actually, it seems that, not a lot of people get buried anymore. A lot more people get cremated.
We're running out of space, man. Like, what do we do? It's like, you've got a grave, and there's nothing but skeleton there anymore, but we can't just dig it up and use that spot anymore.
Exactly.
And we can't just stack the bodies. Like, that's apparently a bad thing to do.
Well, Hey guys, Jason here. Just wanted to drop a quick note and let you know that we got so caught up in the craziness and the fun of talking about this week's film, Phantasm, that we actually ran over our targeted runtime by like an hour. So we're going to do something we haven't done since our first episode of Zombievers. We're going to cut it up into 2 parts. About halfway through, we're gonna make a cut and post the second part of it, so hopefully you'll stick with us for both parts.